Wolves 0, Liverpool 1. All hail the king, Divock Origi, the saviour of the hour, with a last-minute strike on what was a very tricky afternoon at Molineux. Well, joining me to break all this down on the Debrief Live is Matt Addison. Matt, how are you doing?
Yeah, what a moment that is. It feels huge, doesn't it? You can't help but smile. The fact that it was Divock Origi, I'm sure there was a lot of people just going, oh, why is he coming on? Well, that is why. He does have a decent record against Wolves. I've got to give a shout out to Theo Squires. He texted me just on full time there saying, what did I tell you on Blood Red on Friday? Divock Origi always scores against Wolves. I think that's 3 in 6 for him now. So yeah, like I say, it's a massive goal for Liverpool. It felt like it wasn't going to come. I'm sure we'll come on to some of the missed chances, the Diogo Jota one being the obvious one. But yeah, after so many chances missed, just to keep going and keep going and keep going, it really does remind me of the Aston Villa game a couple of seasons back, where it just felt like it was never going to happen, and then Liverpool pop up with a goal right at the end. And yeah, it's so tight at the top. Obviously now this season there's another contender in there as well in Chelsea. Obviously they dropped points earlier on. It felt like a huge chance to sort of close that gap, obviously to go top of the Premier League. Manchester City kicking off in a few minutes' time. So we'll obviously get to see what they do now. But regardless of whether they win or not, I think the smiles are not going to be wiped off Liverpool fans' faces for a good few days, I wouldn't have thought.
No, they're definitely not. And you touched there on how pivotal this is to the title race. This feels like a really huge moment, actually. It wasn't going our way. And then this could be one of those moments where you look back. I think it was Villa a couple of years ago. You look at those games and think, you know what, that is a moment where we really kicked into gear. But I'd like to speak generally about the game. It was a very scrappy affair. It felt more like a Nuno Santo Wolves team than a Bruno Lage Wolves team. Give me your thoughts on the first 94 minutes of the game.
I think first half Liverpool did okay. Actually, I think they played okay. Obviously, it was frustrating to miss a couple of those chances. The one from Aït-Nouri, I think it is, or no, Romain Saiss it was, wasn't it, that cleared it off the line when it looked like Salah was going to put it in. I think Wolves defended really well. Obviously, we know that that's what they're all about. They sit in, they counter attack, and I think Liverpool actually did really well. I think Thiago did well to stop Adama Traore a couple of times. It never quite feels as much as though he is dangerous. It never quite feels like he's going to score or do anything decisive in a game. And I think that was really the difference in terms of that first half. Liverpool largely penned Wolves back. They obviously couldn't quite score, but you felt like 4 or 5 chances had come there where it could have been, and possibly it would be one of those games where it was just going to take one goal and that was going to be it. But yeah, second half, it was a little bit more frustrating. Obviously, Wolves playing the sort of time-wasting games and, Raul Jimenez rolling back onto the pitch when he was injured and things like that. It just felt like the tide was starting to turn, and where Liverpool had been patient in that first half, they were maybe starting to rush things, a few sort of snatch chances. Sadio Mane probably should have done better. Diogo Jota definitely should have done better. I think I would have scored that one. But yeah, it was. It felt like it was going to be a frustrating one. In the end, you've just got to praise Liverpool's mentality to keep going. It wasn't a game where many players played particularly well. I thought Joel Matip did quite well. I thought Thiago was really good in the midfield, but obviously Jordan Henderson comes off injured. I know he's played a lot of football recently, but wasn't having the best of games. It was all a little bit scrappy. And as I said before, I think, Aït-Nouri did really well with Mohamed Salah. Whichever way he turned, there was a player in his way. And I don't think it's a coincidence, really, that he'd gone off by the time Liverpool scored. So, yeah, that was a huge moment for them to win it at the end. They obviously deserved it in terms of the way that the game had gone across the course of it, but sometimes it doesn't quite feel like it's going to be your day. I know John Aldridge, after about 5 minutes on LFC TV's commentary, was saying, "Oh, it's not going to happen for them," and it did kind of feel like that. But yeah, in the end, they got it done. Divock Origi steps up, and I know it's Diogo Jota's birthday today, but I think it'll be very much Diogo Jota buying the pints tonight.
You mentioned there it was very scrappy affair. I think had to really get down and dirty to win that one. But do you think it was more a case of Wolves defending well, or do you think we squandered our chances when we had them?
It was a little bit of both. I think Wolves did pretty well to limit the opportunities. Obviously, I mentioned the Salah one that was not quite off the line, but a couple of yards out. I think it was slightly fortunate that obviously it falls to the defender rather than to Salah for him to just slot it into an empty net. Obviously, the Jota one is, again, more luck than judgment, really, from Conor Cody. He puts his body there, but if Jota puts it anywhere else, really, it's going to go in. So I think it was a decent performance from them. They stifled Liverpool. They stopped them creating as many chances as what they have done for the past few weeks. They've obviously, been drilled really hard. It is interesting you mentioned the comparison to Nuno and how much has Bruno Lage actually changed them this season. I'm not quite sure. There was a lot of kind of praise for the style change, but I'm not sure entirely that is an accurate narrative. Maybe they're a bit more expansive in other games. I can't say I've watched a huge amount of them this season, but I think it was a bit of a combination. I think Sadio Mane, the chance on 85 minutes or something where Sarr makes a good save. I think that's one that on another day you'd expect him to score. There was still enough there. I think that Liverpool should have done a little bit more. Even to be honest, the header from Jota in the first half could have been into the back of the net. The Trent one was slightly more difficult. Obviously, a brilliant pass from Thiago, but then for Trent to keep it down was a bit of a tough ask. So, yeah, I think Liverpool's finishing on another day would have been better. Obviously, we've seen them do that plenty of times this season. It's the first time in a long time that they've not scored 2 goals away from home. But, yeah, ultimately, they did deserve it. They got what they deserved in the end. But the mentality giants type thing is going to come back, I think, because to just keep going when it doesn't feel like it's your day, no matter how well Wolves have played or how poorly Liverpool have finished. It's a combination of the two, but to keep going regardless is a big statement, I think.
Well, to touch as well on the birthday boy and former Wolves man Diogo Jota, it's a pretty big miss, Matt, wasn't it? Not his day today.
No, it wasn't. It was a strange one. I think there was a few times that he gave the ball away and just didn't quite seem at it. I know the Wolves fans were booing him, which is an interesting one. Not quite sure why that was. I know a lot of them weren't massively bothered that he'd left. Actually, at the time, he was a bit part player really for the second half of the season before he joined Liverpool. But I think it just, whether it was the occasion going back, I mean, he didn't have a great game, I don't think, at Wolves last season either. So maybe there's something in that. But yeah, it was a strange performance from him because he's been in such good form. We've been praising him for so long. He was excellent against Everton. The goal that he took there was a brilliant finish, but it just never quite felt like it was going to be his day, and it was no shock really that he came off before the end because it was just one of those afternoons really where nothing really happened for him. I think you can probably excuse maybe some of the poor passing out from the back and maybe the poor sort of passing through the midfield and into the attack from Liverpool. But I think that's a lot down to the wind and the weather conditions. I don't think you can really attribute that in terms of the finishing from them. So it was a strange one to see. Not quite sure why it happened. The only thing I can say is that he's obviously gone back to a former club and it's his birthday and there's a few different factors there. But it's a really strange one because he's been brilliant for so long. I think he was trying to do basically for the open goal what he did against Arsenal, where he just sort of feinted a couple of times to shoot and in the end just dribbles it in. But yeah, it was one of those. If he'd have scored, we'd all be saying, "Oh, he's done brilliantly there. He's been calm. He's placed it." But yeah, just the final touch, unfortunately, let him down.
Yeah, literally anywhere but Cody. But to be fair to him, I think going back to it, it's just one of those games where they really did revert back to the Nuno style. Because under Bruno Lage, to be fair, they have seemed more expansive. But I think teams against us now are going to be looking at that and using it as a blueprint to defend against. You look at Salah on the other side, Matt. He had 2 men marking the whole game pretty much, didn't he?
Yeah, it was almost the perfect way to play against Mohamed Salah. I think obviously on another day, Wolves do lose by 3 or 4 goals if Liverpool are clinical. And obviously you can't always just put 2 players on Salah because that means somebody else is free. But yeah, I think they did a really, really good job of limiting him, actually. As I said before, Ain't Nori, every time he tried to turn, he was just in his face. He was getting a little touch in. He was getting his body on the line, blocking things. It just didn't feel like it was his day. But what we have seen from Liverpool at times this season is that it's not just been Mohamed Salah scoring. Obviously, there were times last season where it did feel like if Salah didn't score, then nobody would. But there are other players this season that could step up, Jota being one, Mane, the midfield we talked about in terms of goals coming from there. Obviously, Henderson midweek scores. And I think, on days like this, you've got to hope that somebody else can step up. Ultimately, it was Salah that was involved in the goal at the end. But yeah, I think it's one of those where there's a slight template in terms of how you play against Mohamed Salah. But like I say, it's still a big risk because if you're leaving somebody else free, that somebody else could well find the back of the net.
Well, I'm going to move on now. Ironically enough, in my notes, I had a question whether it was the right decision to bring Origi on for Henderson. We're going to have to move on to him, Matt. What a moment from Divock Origi.
Yeah, an incredible moment. I think it's been a little while since he's come up with a moment like that. To be fair, there've been some incredible ones. It's a real strange one. You either get a last minute winner from him, or you get absolutely nothing and not really anything in between. So I'm sure there was a good few people who were slightly wary of him coming off the bench and maybe thinking that Liverpool were lacking a few ideas. Maybe I got a couple of texts during the game saying, "Oh, if only Liverpool had Roberto Firmino to come on, that might change things." But yeah, what a moment for him. I think it's a big moment in Liverpool's season. It's not the first time that Divock Origi has come up with a big moment, but it is a reminder that there is a decent player in there, and I thought he did well. It wasn't just that touch. I mean, the winner that he got against Everton, for example, a few years ago, that was kind of just the only thing that he did. Didn't really do much, but puts the ball in the back of the net. But I thought actually today he did a couple of other bits as well in the short time that he was on the pitch. He did a better job really of linking the play than the players who'd been on before him. He did a few other good bits as well. So that's good to see. I'm sure he'll get the start on Tuesday against Milan, and Liverpool are going to need him. Let's put it that way in January. Him, Minamino, whoever it is, somebody has got to step up and take on that mantle from Salah and Mane for AFCON. So, yeah, the more goals he can get between now and then, the more minutes he can get, the better it'll be for Liverpool in the long run, I think.
Well, I put a few of your comments on the screen there. Keep them coming, everyone. Loving to see it. Divock Origi giving us another Saturday night to party about. But Matt, going to move back to the title race. Jurgen Klopp in the week arguing that it wasn't one yet. But what are your thoughts on that? And obviously Chelsea dropping points. I think we're in first now, aren't we? With City kicking off in 1 minute's time.
Yeah, Liverpool top of the league, and it had to be. It had to be. I think a lot of questions would have been asked. There's been times this season where they've dropped points and obviously not capitalised, and people have asked questions of the squad and they've asked questions of Liverpool's longevity really in this title race. But I think, yeah, having seen Chelsea lose by the same scoreline to West Ham that Liverpool had, that would have been a boost for them. It's a little bit of extra pressure, obviously, to go out and get that. But the fact that they've done it, I think, is really massive. I think Liverpool had to win just to keep that momentum up. I think obviously there's the big games to come. Aston Villa is going to be difficult next week. There's loads of games where Liverpool are just going to have to grind it out over the next month or so. But I think as long as Liverpool can be there or thereabouts, if not top, then within a point or two of it by the other side of the Christmas period, I think that's what they need to aim for. Really, it's going to be difficult to do that, but as long as they can go to Chelsea within touching distance, I think on the 2nd or 3rd of January, I think that's got to be the aim. I think Chelsea are in a position now where they've lost a couple of games or dropped a couple of points over the last couple of weeks. Maybe the question marks can be asked of them rather than Liverpool. And I think the narrative in a title race is always important. I think if Liverpool can just keep going, keep grinding out results, keep finding ways to win, on certain occasions, it's going to be slightly easier than it was today. You can't rely, obviously, on a last-minute goal like that every single week. But yeah, I think it was a big one in that sense as well. The fact that Chelsea have slipped up, regardless of what City do, whenever either of these three teams do slip up, it's going to be the biggest talking point of the season. I think Jurgen Klopp is right in the sense that is it a title race after 14 or 15 games? Maybe not, but maybe you can't win the league at this point, but you can certainly lose it. And Liverpool being right up there and in the race, despite having lost a couple of games that they probably would have expected to get something from, I think is huge. And they can't afford too many slip-ups, and they didn't get one today, thankfully.
Yeah, exactly as you said there, Matt. It's not a race yet, I don't think, but we definitely want to be in that race come the end of December. Well, I think we'll leave it there. That's everything we've got time for today. So it was a frustrating afternoon, but of course, Divock Origi saving the day for us once again. Let's hope that Watford can do us a favour now against Man City. Well, from myself, Patrick Smith and Matt Addison, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the Blood Red channel.